thank you for joining me today to talk about sustainability and the role construction is playing in the UK's transition to a net zero future. My first question is, obviously the UK is the first major economy in the world to pass laws to end its contribution to global warming by 2050. As Chief Executive of the Finishes and Interiors sector, what is your view and that of your members on the climate change challenge and the role your sector plays in this?
I think, Simon, the truth is we can't continue to look past the headlines and the facts. We all have to adjust behaviours in order to ensure our lifestyles today are not writing cheques that we can't cash in the future. So construction is no exception. And I do believe within our supply chain there's a growing understanding, not just of our responsibilities, but also the potential of the sector to support change. So we've got the Construction Leadership Council who have led with the Construct Zero programme, which is a great start. Definitely something we can get involved in as the next tier of the supply chain down. And the work's really highlighted that across construction and building performance and transport, we as a sector have got a direct impact of about 43% of UK emissions. So about 43% is our fault. Finishes and interiors is a £10 billion sector, so it's roughly 10% of the turnover of construction, but we're also appreciative that our impact is disproportionate. Because if you think about the building process, we're the bit where the magic happens, right? We're the bit that turns that cell and structure into a home, an office, a hotel, a hospital or a theatre. So our focus includes the refurbishment as well as development of new buildings. And a building in its life is likely to have around 30 refits, as where evolving usage and fashion drives that need to change. So when specifying for the finished interior sector, decisions are key. What's the impact of what we're deciding today on this project, the next project, and all future refurbishments of the building? So it drives behaviours and ultimately it drives that impact of the building moving forward. So we recognise we've got a huge part to play. Also, there's a growing recognition that we know we need to be better. So there is that individual value set within companies, and we also recognise that the companies of the future are going to be those sustainable companies. So I think there's a growing recognition that it's going to be driven by regulation, it's going to be driven by customer choice, and it's going to be driven by our own value sets as we move toward net zero. And my hope is that we're 40% of the problem, and we take the opportunity to become 60% of the solution. So what I'm hoping is that we can actually start to look as our community about the simple and intuitive things that we can do, as well as the clever and science-based stuff. So we're trying to keep our focus on that I, we and they approach to say, so what do I need to do as an individual business, as an SME potentially, because I don't always feel in control of everything. So what do I need to do in order to make my business a little bit better tomorrow? How does that look next week and next year to form a sustainability plan? So it's not all about science-based targets and complex calculations. It's doing what we know is right, and that will hopefully lead to a collective change.
So clearly, obviously, you're taking that proactive lead, in support of this. And can you outline some of the plans that you have coming up, in terms of setting a sustainability strategy? Yeah,
we're trying to focus on that big picture, but bring it down to what it means to individual companies. So we're looking at breaking things down into 5 key areas. So the first bit is about informing design, because I say we only deliver what our customers want, right? We can lead in that process, we can help them make educated and informed decisions, but ultimately the design of the buildings themselves are going to be driven by client need and to some extent regulation. So we're looking at that sort of inspiring design and making sure that people are aware of the art of the possible. And there we're working with organisations like Barbour ABI to ensure that innovation in our sector is plugged into the brains of those people that are designing and specifying buildings so they understand the art of the possible. Then there's that increasing the understanding within our community so that our members are more than delivery mechanisms, that they're moving up that scale of customer service to ensure that they're informing the design, that they're informing the process, that they're inspiring change through that. So it's basic understanding within our sector of the impact of what we do and how to have those better conversations with their clients. We're looking at setting targets and standardisation of things as well, because some of this does require a bit more of a standard approach. If everybody's measuring everything in different ways, it's very difficult for us to form that collective view. So we're starting to look at how we can agree how to measure some of our waste, for example. We're looking at initiatives like pallet loops, so we can start to look at, if we know we've got this amount of pallet waste coming through our supply chain, how can we avoid that with the pallet? So there's some measurement of standardization and standard approach. We're providing a vehicle to share best practice, and we're also trying to sort of inspire people with case studies and stories of other people in the community who've gone above and beyond. So, I mean, we're engaging with the Construction Leadership Council because they're doing that bigger piece, and also with the government as well, who are working on their sort of race to zero and the pledges and toolkits and trying to adapt those. So it's the work started. We've sort of started with our sustainability hub, which is pulling it all together, and that curation of everything. And now we're starting to look at what's possible and creating new content.
Are there any other sectors that you admire in terms of the way they're leading their sustainability strategy?
Some of the major contractors now, they're setting some really interesting programs. I saw, for example, Wilmot Dixon last week announced that some of the credit facilities that they have are going to be linked to their own net zero strategy. So again, within our own sector, I think there's some fairly inspiring and unique thinking that's helping to change.
What do you feel the business impact will be in terms of the plans that you have in terms of sustainability?
I hope better communication and earlier engagement in the supply chain will be the biggest. It's something. Our core strategy as FIS is about delivering quality through a focus on product, process, and people. And this sort of P planet is like the extra P, right? And I'm increasingly of the view that quality, safety, sustainability, net zero are fairly interchangeable as words, because what they're all linked to is selecting the right products, a clear and robust process in which early engagement and communication are essential, with all tiers of the supply chain. So we're bringing that team together as early as possible, and often in construction, our procurement processes drive this sort of late appointment when they're hungry type sort of thinking, rather than bring them in early and use their expertise and help to change. So I'm hoping that some areas around that will help us to drive change. So when I'm looking at our Ps, I'm thinking product selection is definitely going to drive change. We're going to have to start looking at that extended producer responsibility. The process has to improve, or we can't deliver change. We're hamstrung. I think the importance of people as well, and that's. I remember reading a report a number of years ago now by the Zero Carbon Hub when they were a thing, and it was quite damning of construction at the time when they talked about the fact that we were substituting product without due regard, that the process lacked rigor in certain places and the supervision wasn't adequate. But one of the big ones was that the sort of the products were effectively inadequate products because of the substitution were being installed by people who didn't really understand the products, and hence mistakes were being made along the way. In fact, to be honest, that report, which was, I think it was about 2008 or 2011, actually drove the PPP strategy that we developed, because it was very clear product, process, and people was what was wrong. We were adapting it to deal with fire, and it's almost like full circle coming back now to talk about sustainability again. This industry I love. It's a great industry. It's an amazing industry. It reinvents itself every day, right? But it's suffering from a perception and trust issue, and we're being judged by the worst of us and not the best of us. So this is an opportunity for me to help drive that change in perception, and also to start to look at how we attract talent, because it's an opportunity to change that negative perception and allow people to see the industry that I see, that is construction.
Yeah. In terms of your plans, I mean, I know you've talked about this, covered a lot of this already, but when do you see these plans sort of coming into fruition? I mean, when are they being introduced? Is it sort of ongoing at the moment?
Yeah, it's ongoing and iterative now. We're off. We've set up the working group, set up the leadership group. That's evolving now into a working group, and we're recruiting the people we need, the expertise, because we don't have the expertise in house necessarily to really deliver change. So we're buying some of that in as additional resource. So it's all happening. It's all starting already.
Okay. You've also talked about these figures, but obviously a recent manifesto published by Perkins and Will identified that fit out is responsible for 40%. I think you've already quoted that figure, energy consumed by a building, and that 300 tons of fit out material goes to landfill every day. In light of this, how will companies in the fit out sector go beyond sustainability being simply a tick box exercise and ultimately practice what they preach?
I don't think we've got a choice. I think the customers are expecting it and the regulations demanding it. The moral imperative is obvious. The difference is where the weight of support is coming for this change, and it is coming through in the next generation, and that is going to drive policy and politics. The clients are starting to care. So now, through the process, we've got now the time and resource in order to drive that change.
After the year that we've had in terms of the pandemic, would you see 2021 as the turning point for the sector in going green?
I hope so. I think we're at a unique point now. And I think, the conversation is around transformation. And construction is going to have to transform. We are slowly improving. I believe we're about to hit a tipping point because we've had other factors. We've had the quality issues that have been born out of the Grenfell tragedy. We've got fundamental challenges to the business models by which we're operating. The margins in construction are horrendously thin. So I think I believe that we are on the start of a transformation process. I believe we've got to a bit of a tipping point. I think some of the regulation that's coming through is going to support the change. So we've got the Building Safety Bill, but all of these things are starting to come out in that sort of process of stop, check the design, move forward to the next stage, stop, check the design, move forward to the next stage. So I think as we pull the design process forward, we make we create a much better environment in order to make those changes. I think there is one other point which I think is a but. Change doesn't come because we want it. It becomes because we care enough to invest the time and resource in change. So for profound change, what we need is to look at not just how we build buildings, but also how we invest in them and manage them as assets. And there's a huge responsibility, which I still don't feel we've got our heads around as society, in the commissioning and management of buildings as assets. So I think there's much more asset management that needs to be. If we treated our cars as badly as we treat our buildings, they'd never last as long and they'd never be as efficient. So I think with all things sustainable, this isn't just something that construction can deliver for you. It's something that we have to do together. Again, it comes back to that point I was making earlier about trust, doesn't it? We need that relationship of trust. We need people to trust construction to deliver. And we need to work in a better way with our clients to ensure that we don't just build buildings for them, but we set them up to manage those buildings more effectively as well. And I think that's a responsibility for us and for our clients.